Today at 9:16 a.m., Mars leaves Aquarius and enters Pisces. And overnight, every relationship conflict in your life stops being clear and starts being impossible to navigate. Yesterday, if you were angry, you could name it. You could point to the specific thing your partner did that bothered you. You could articulate the boundary they crossed. You could have a direct conversation. But today, your anger is underwater. It's everywhere and nowhere. You can't pin it down. You can't explain it clearly. You try to talk about what's wrong, and the words come out wrong. You try to set a boundary, and it sounds weak. You try to express frustration, and it turns into tears, or silence, or passive-aggressive comments you didn't mean to make. And your partner is confused. You're confused. Everything is messy. Everything is unclear. And tomorrow is the full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo that's going to expose everything. This isn't you being unclear. This isn't you losing your ability to communicate. This is Mars, the planet of anger, assertion, conflict, directness, entering Pisces, the sign where boundaries dissolve, where everything becomes emotional, where nothing stays sharp. For the last month, Mars was in Aquarius, intellectual, detached, able to fight with words and logic. You could disagree without drowning in feeling, but Mars in Pisces doesn't fight clean. Mars in Pisces doesn't fight directly. Mars in Pisces cries when it means to yell, goes silent when it means to speak, feels everything and says nothing, or says too much and regrets it immediately. Today, every relationship conflict you have becomes a swamp, and the eclipse tomorrow is going to reveal everything you didn't say clearly today. I'm going to tell you exactly what's happening today. Why Tiamat, the Babylonian goddess of chaotic waters, shows us that some battles can't be fought with weapons, they have to be felt through. What Mars in Pisces actually does, and why all your relationship conflicts suddenly lose clarity. Which 3 signs struggle most with Mars in Pisces energy, and what you need to do today to navigate conflict when you can't fight directly. Because today isn't about winning the argument, it's about surviving the emotional flood without drowning yourself or your relationship. Today, Mars enters the water, and you have to learn to fight in the deep. Tiamat couldn't be defeated with swords. She was the ocean itself. Let me tell you about Tiamat. In Babylonian mythology, she's the primordial goddess of salt water and chaos, the mother of all gods, and here's her story. The younger gods, her children, become too loud, too rebellious, too disruptive. They disturb Tiamat's peace, and her consort Apsu wants to destroy them, but Tiamat refuses. She protects her children even when they annoy her, even when they cause chaos, even when they disrespect her. She's the protective mother, the boundaryless ocean that holds everything. But then Apsu is killed by the younger gods, and something in Tiamat breaks. She transforms from protective mother to destructive force. She creates monsters, serpents with venom, dragons, demons, and she goes to war against her own children, not with strategy, not with clear battle plans, with chaos, with floods, with overwhelming, consuming, drowning force. And the younger gods can't fight her, because how do you fight the ocean? How do you battle chaos itself? Marduk, the warrior god, finally defeats her, but not with a direct strike. He catches her in a net, fills her with wind until she can't move, and then, only then, can he kill her. Because you can't fight water with a sword, you have to trap it, contain it, force it into form before you can defeat it. Here's what makes Tiamat's mythology essential for understanding today. Mars in Pisces is Tiamat. It's anger that can't be contained in clear boundaries. It's conflict that spreads like water, seeping into everything, touching every surface, impossible to pin down. Mars in Aquarius was Marduk with his weapons, clear, direct, strategic. But Mars in Pisces is Tiamat in her chaotic form, anger that drowns, resentment that floods, conflicts that swallow both people whole, and you can't fight it the way you're used to fighting. You can't use logic, you can't stay detached, you have to feel your way through. You have to swim in the chaos until you find solid ground. Today, every relationship conflict becomes Tiamat's flood, and you're learning to navigate water instead of dry land. What's actually happening, astrologically, and why Mars hates Pisces. Alright, let me break down what's happening. Because Mars in Pisces is one of the most challenging placements for the warrior planet. Mars is action, assertion, directness, boundaries, anger expressed clearly. Mars wants to fight face to face. Mars wants to win decisively. Mars wants clean battles with clear outcomes. But Pisces is boundaryless, emotional, indirect, sacrificing. Pisces doesn't fight, it absorbs, it doesn't assert, it surrenders, it doesn't create clarity, it dissolves into feeling, and when Mars enters Pisces, the warrior planet can't function the way it's designed to function. Here's what this means practically. For the last month, Mars was in Aquarius. You could argue intellectually, you could disagree without it becoming emotionally overwhelming. You could say, I don't like when you do X, and it was just information. Clean, clear, direct. But today, Mars enters Pisces, and suddenly, every conflict carries emotional weight. You can't just state a boundary. You feel like you're hurting someone by having boundaries. You can't just express anger. It comes out mixed with sadness, guilt, confusion. You can't fight directly because Pisces doesn't have the emotional infrastructure for direct combat. And there's more. Mars will be in Pisces for 5 weeks until April 9th. That's 5 weeks of messy conflicts, 5 weeks of passive-aggressive communication, 5 weeks of crying when you mean to yell, 5 weeks of going silent instead of speaking up, 5 weeks of feeling guilty for being angry. And it starts today, one day before the full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo that's designed to expose everything, create clarity, demand precision. The contrast couldn't be sharper. The eclipse wants truth. Mars in Pisces offers fog. The eclipse wants clear seeing. Mars in Pisces offers drowning in feeling. Here's what happens today, specifically. You wake up and you know something's wrong in your relationship, but you can't name it. It's not one thing, it's everything and nothing. You feel resentful, but you can't explain why. You're hurt, but you don't want to make them feel bad. You're angry, but expressing anger feels too aggressive. So you don't say anything, or you say something passive-aggressive, or you start crying, and then you're angry at yourself for crying, because that wasn't what you meant to do. And your partner asks, "What's wrong?" And you say nothing, because you genuinely don't know how to articulate the underwater pressure you're feeling. That's Mars in Pisces. That's the flood. That's today. Pisces, your ruling planet's house just got invaded by the warrior, and you don't know how to fight. If you're a Pisces sun, moon, or rising, Mars entering your sign today feels like violence in a sacred space. Pisces is peace, surrender, flow, unconditional love, and Mars is war, assertion, boundaries, conditional engagement. For the next 5 weeks, Mars is moving through your sign, and you're going to feel the pressure of having to assert yourself when your natural instinct is to accommodate. Having to set boundaries when your natural instinct is to dissolve them. Having to fight when your natural instinct is to forgive. Here's what specifically happens for Pisces today. You notice yourself getting angry in your relationship, but the anger feels wrong. It feels like you're being mean. It feels like you're destroying the peace. So you suppress it. You smile when you're actually hurt. You say it's fine when it's not fine. You accommodate their needs while yours go unmet. And the anger doesn't go away. It goes underground. It turns into resentment, into passive-aggressive comments, into emotional withdrawal, into crying yourself to sleep, wondering why you can't just speak up. Here's your specific work for the next 5 weeks, and it starts today. First, your anger is not violence. Setting a boundary is not cruelty. Saying, "I don't like this," doesn't make you the bad guy. Pisces thinks that peace requires total accommodation, but real peace requires both people getting their needs met, not just one. Second, write before you speak. Mars in Pisces can't articulate clearly in the moment, so write down what you're actually feeling, then translate it into words you can say out loud. Third, practice saying "I'm angry" without apologizing for it. Not "I'm sorry but I'm a little upset," just "I'm angry." Let the anger exist without softening it. Today, Pisces, Mars in your sign for 5 weeks means you have to learn to be angry without losing your softness, to fight without becoming harsh, to assert without becoming aggressive. That's your medicine. That's your growth. That's how you integrate the warrior into the mystic. It's uncomfortable, but it's necessary because relationships need both peace and boundaries, both love and limits, both acceptance and assertion. Today, you start learning how to hold both, Virgo. Tomorrow's eclipse is in your sign, and today, Mars makes everything too emotional to think clearly. Now, Virgo sun, moon or rising, tomorrow at 6:38 a.m. is the full moon lunar eclipse in your sign, and eclipses in your sign are about precision, clarity, analysis, seeing what's actually true. But today, Mars enters Pisces, your opposite sign, and makes everything too emotional to analyze clearly. You're trying to think through your relationship problems. You're trying to create a clear list of what's working and what's not. You're trying to have a logical conversation, but Mars in Pisces keeps making everything about feelings, and you can't think when everything's about feelings. Here's what specifically happens for Virgo today. You try to have a practical conversation with your partner. I need us to discuss our communication patterns, but instead of a rational discussion, they cry, or they shut down, or they get defensive. And now you're dealing with emotions instead of solutions. Or maybe you're the one who can't stay rational. You start the conversation calmly, but 3 minutes in you're crying, or you're furious, or you're saying things you don't mean, and you hate it. You hate losing control of the conversation. You hate not being able to stay logical. You hate that everything's messy when you need it to be clear. Here's your specific work for today and tomorrow. First, accept that not everything can be solved through analysis. Some things have to be felt through. Some conflicts require emotional processing before logical problem solving. Second, tomorrow's eclipse will bring clarity, but today is the messy part. Today is the emotional flood that precedes the clarity. Let it be messy. Don't try to force precision today. Third, if you need to have an important conversation, wait until after the eclipse. Today and tonight, everything's too emotionally charged. Tomorrow, after the eclipse, you'll see clearly. Today, you just survive the flood. Today, Virgo, you're being asked to feel before you think, to let the emotion exist before you analyze it, to surrender control before you regain it tomorrow. That's hard for you, but it's the process. Today is the chaos. Tomorrow is the clarity. You can't skip the chaos to get to the clarity. You have to move through it. So today, just feel. Tomorrow, you'll understand. Sagittarius, Mars in Pisces, squares your sign, and every relationship conflict feels like drowning in confusion. Okay, Sagittarius sun, moon or rising, Mars in Pisces squares your sign. A square is tension, friction, conflict between two very different energies. Sagittarius is fire, direct, honest, freedom-loving, philosophically clear. Pisces is water, indirect, emotional, boundary-dissolving, unclear. And when Mars moves into Pisces and squares your sign, every relationship conflict becomes a battle between your need for honesty and their need for emotional protection, between your need for freedom and their need for emotional connection, between your truth-telling and their feelings. Here's what specifically happens for Sagittarius over the next 5 weeks, and it starts today. You say something direct, something honest, something true, and your partner hears it as cruel, as insensitive, as too blunt, and you're confused because you were just being honest. You weren't trying to hurt them, but Mars in Pisces makes everyone more emotionally sensitive. What used to be acceptable directness now feels like an attack, and you don't know how to navigate that. You don't know how to tell the truth without hurting feelings. You don't know how to be yourself without causing emotional chaos. Here's your specific work for the next 5 weeks. First, truth can be delivered gently. You don't have to sacrifice honesty to be kind, but you do have to consider timing and tone. Second, before you speak, ask yourself, is this true? Is this necessary? Is this kind? If it's true and necessary but not kind, find a kinder way to say it. Third, when your partner gets emotional in response to something you said, don't dismiss their feelings as overreacting. Mars in Pisces means everyone's more emotionally raw. Honor that. Today, Sagittarius, you're learning that freedom and connection aren't opposites, that honesty and kindness can coexist, that being direct doesn't mean being brutal. Mars in Pisces squares your sign for 5 weeks. That's 5 weeks of learning to fight with compassion, to speak truth with care, to be yourself while considering others. It's uncomfortable, but it's growth. And by the time Mars leaves Pisces, you'll be better at loving without losing yourself, at connecting without sacrificing freedom, at fighting without destroying. The protocol and why unclear conflicts are still real conflicts. Alright, let me give you the protocol for navigating Mars in Pisces, because here's what people get wrong. They think because the conflict is unclear, it's not real. They think because they can't articulate their anger clearly, maybe they shouldn't be angry. They think because the fight is messy, maybe they should just let it go. But unclear conflicts are still real conflicts. Messy anger is still real anger, and dismissing it because it's not clean only makes it worse. First, today, accept that you won't have clarity. Not today. Tomorrow's eclipse brings clarity, but today is the emotional processing that precedes clarity. So if you feel angry but can't explain why, that's okay. If you feel resentful but can't pinpoint the cause, that's normal. Don't force yourself to be rational when the energy is emotional. Let yourself feel without needing to understand yet. Second, if you need to address a conflict today, write it out first. Mars in Pisces can't speak clearly in real time, but it can write. So before you talk to your partner, write down what you're feeling. Get all the messy emotions on paper, then read it. Find the core issue underneath the emotional flood. Then speak from that core issue, not from the flood. Third, distinguish between feeling everything and saying everything. Mars in Pisces makes you feel everything intensely, but you don't have to say everything you feel. Feel the anger, feel the hurt, feel the resentment. But before you speak, filter what actually needs to be said. What's just emotional processing that you need to do internally or with a friend? Fourth, apologize for your delivery, not for your feelings. If you express anger in a passive-aggressive way and your partner gets hurt, apologize for how you said it. But don't apologize for being angry. I'm sorry I said that in a hurtful way, but I am actually upset about this issue and we need to talk about it. Separate the emotion from the expression. And fifth, for the next 5 weeks, lower your expectations for clean conflicts. They're not going to be clean. They're going to be emotional, messy, unclear, and that's okay. Pisces conflicts resolve through feeling, not logic, through crying it out, not debating it out, through surrendering to the chaos until you find the ground underneath. That's not weakness. That's how water works. Alright, today at 9:16 a.m. Mars enters Pisces. The warrior planet enters the ocean, and every relationship conflict in your life loses its sharp edges and becomes diffuse, emotional, impossible to fight directly. Tomorrow is the full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo that will bring precision and clarity, but today is the emotional flood that precedes the clarity. Today is Tiamat's chaos before Marduk's order, and you can't skip it. You have to feel it. You have to swim through it. You have to let the conflict be messy and unclear and emotionally overwhelming, and trust that on the other side after the eclipse tomorrow, you'll see what was real and what was just water. Do the protocol, accept the lack of clarity today, write before you speak. Feel everything but don't say everything. Apologize for delivery, not feelings. Lower your expectations for clean conflicts. This is Mars in Pisces. This is fighting in the deep. This is learning that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is surrender to the feeling until you find solid ground. Today you learn to fight like water. Tomorrow the eclipse shows you what was worth fighting for.